Now in studio by Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Good to see you.
It's nice to be here, Alexis.
Thanks so much for being here. You know, everybody talked about the meeting between the two of you last week. Clearly a gesture by this president that the relationship between you and the United States is critical to our trade, our economy. Did you, I guess, are you happy with the meeting? Did you get what you wanted?
We were all delighted. There was a long tradition up until about the 90s of U.S. presidents often making Canada their first foreign visit. So it was wonderful that President Obama was able to revive that tradition. He was, there's a lot of excitement about his election in Canada. He was very well received. And we had good discussions. And, I think it's important. We're all in Canada. We're, as you know, great friends and neighbors of the United States. We have the largest trading relationship in history. The one thing we often suffer from is because we're not a squeaky wheel, we often don't get the grease and we're forgotten. So it was great to have that kind of attention from our great friends in the United States. And one of the reasons I decided to travel here today was to follow up on that rare attention we actually got in the U.S. media last week.
Thank you very much.
Nice to be here, Larry.
Let me begin with an interesting subject here, banking. Everybody's talking about banking. The Canadian banks appear to be in much better shape than the American banks. They have fewer toxic assets. Their losses aren't nearly as bad. No one's talking about bankruptcy up there. I want to learn from our northern cousins. What can you tell us? Why are Canadian banks looking better than our banks?
Well, first of all, I should tell you it is true. We have I think the only banks in the Western world where we're not looking at bailouts or anything like that.
No TARP money, sir, if I'm not mistaken.
We haven't got any
TARP money.
Haven't got any TARP money. We've gone in and done some market transactions with our banks to improve liquidity. But I think the reasons are really complex, Larry. First of all, our banks are private. We don't have a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac equivalent mucking around in the system.
Is that a lesson right there, Prime Minister?
Well, I think my observation is those are institutions with a difficult private-public mix, and sometimes private-public mixes have benefits, and sometimes they have the worst of both worlds.
Have leverage and borrowing ratios that might have been enforced, because that's clearly one of the breakdowns here in the States.
Well, we do have leverage ratios. What's ironic is that our own banks had not actually achieved those ratios. They were actually working under them. Part of what
They were under leveraged?
They were under leveraged.
Wait, can I just... Canadian banks were under leveraged?
Under what they could have been.
I didn't know there was such a thing on this entire planet Earth.
Well,
emissions issue. Some states like California may actually try to stop the importation of energy and oil from the Canadian sands. What can you tell us?
Well,
how is this going to be resolved?
First of all, let me be clear about the importation of oil sands oil. Regardless of what any legislature does, the United States will be importing this oil, because there is absolutely no doubt, if you look at the supply and demand pattern into the future, the United States is going to need Canadian oil. It is the one secure, growing, market-based source of energy that the United States has. So there will be no choice but to import oil sands oil.
That's an economic decision, but what about the political legislative route? Did you talk with President Obama about that? Counter running this from the White House, he's got people all over his administration, his whole campaign, and as I said, he's got Carl Brown really hostile to the oil sands because of the carbon problem.
And look, we believe there is a carbon problem there, Larry, and we're prepared to work to reduce the carbon footprint of the oil sands. But as President Obama himself said, when he talked about the oil sands, he also talked about coal-fired electricity in the United States. Carbon emissions from coal-fired electricity in the United States are 40 times the emissions of the oil sands. So we'll work on that problem, just as we expect the United States to be working on the problem of coal-fired electricity.
You don't think the flow of your exports of the oil sands will be stopped? You don't think that flow will be stopped because of these environmental climate change considerations?
I think that policy, any policy like that, is completely unrealistic. If you look at American needs for energy and where Americans can get the supply at a reasonable price, completely unrealistic. But it doesn't mean that we will shirk our environmental responsibilities. We are making significant investments, carbon capture and storage and other things your government's also doing. And we will do what we can to reduce the carbon footprint. But there should be no illusion that economic reality will hit those environmental policies pretty hard when one goes to implement them.
One can only
understands how serious it is to avoid protectionist drift in this present economic climate.
Last one, Pope, on that point. As I understand it, your latest fiscal package actually lowered import barriers in a number of places, which you believe helps Canada and helps the rest of the world. Now, the United States stimulus package raises import barriers with a Buy America provision for iron and steel and other infrastructure materials. Did you talk to President Obama? How is this going to be resolved?
Well,
you're going one way, they're going another.
We certainly raised our concerns, and as you know, that provision was modified in the Senate to ensure that they would conform with all existing trade obligations. There are trade provisions that allow you to have preferences in government procurement, but we think it's very important if we're going to, kickstart this global economy, that administrations around the world avoid turning stimulus packages into protectionism. Because if you try and stimulate a national economy or a national economy at the expense of the global economy, national economy alone, we're going to make the whole situation worse around the world. I think my conversations with the President, I'm quite convinced he understands that.
In Canada doing better than you are in the United States, but we're not getting out of this until you figure out how to get out of it. Is that essentially what you took away from that, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying. I think he's doing exactly the right thing, by the way.
That if in fact Canada has this sort of 15 minutes of fame because of our brush with Obama last week, and you have got that short window in which Americans might very well listen to you, is this what he should be saying?
I think that he did it exactly right. He followed up quickly and, in fact, of course, is focusing on the things he talked about. But